Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, October 23rd, 2020. This is the bi-weekly KOps office hours meeting. I am your moderator facilitator, Justin Santa Barbara. I work at Google. A reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be put on the internet, and to please be mindful of our code of conduct, which generally boils down to being a good person and using the raise hand feature if we get too many people talking at once. We have an agenda. I put a link to that in the chat. Please do feel free to add your items there, presumably in the open discussion section, but anywhere where it fits. Please also feel free to add your name into the attendees list. It can be helpful for people watching the video on YouTube to know who you are. Otherwise, we will just jump right into it. We're a couple of minutes late, so we will get going. First up, our first sort of section is to review action items from last time. And it sounds like, Peter, you created the release 119 branch.
Yep, and it went pretty well. And I updated the documentation. So we should be pretty much all set there.
That's wonderful. So there were no permissions missing that you needed type thing?
No, just needing approvers on some test info PRs, but that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you for doing that. And on a similar note, 119.0 Alpha 5, Cyprian, do you want to?
Yep, that went out pretty smooth this time. Didn't need any help to get it released, at least on GitHub. So the other parts are still with Justin, but at least for alphas and betas where we don't have that much traffic, I think it's reasonable to do it first, to do it any one of us, and maybe for official releases until we get artifacts, automatic publishing, you will still have to do it.
Right, and so the big win I think right now is I think you changed the order, so we don't need any of the privileged buckets yet, or the more privileged buckets yet. We don't need them. They are helpful for, as you say, for the more popular releases, but we can, a GitHub release suffices, is my understanding. Is that right?
Yep. Great. No complaints from anyone with this release.
Perfect. The automation is continuing. And next up is the motivation for the automation, which is 118.2, which I was supposed to do and is not automated, and I did not do it, and I apologize, and I have written it down on my list, and I will do it, I think, this afternoon. I think there was one blocker which was resolved previously, so there are no active blockers. Assuming that stays the same, I'll do it this afternoon.
I'm not aware of anything Perfect. In 118 that's missing.
We can do thank you. We can do a proper call on that later on in that section, I guess. The next review of action, review of action items from last time is around the NLB support status, which is PR 9011. John or Peter, I think you were the two sort of looking at this. Do you have any thoughts on where we are on that, or anyone else?
Oh, last time I talked with him, I think Peter had asked him to split out the links to the target group, and we're trying to figure out how that fits with, what should be a separate task and such. It looks like inside the NLB are structs for the target groups, which aren't tasks, and then the tasks seem to be associated with the target groups.
Okay, that sounds confusing. I can also have a look at that.
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
Peter, you're here, right? Do you want to? Is there anything particular there you want to bring up?
No, what John said was mostly up to date. Yeah, we're just waiting on more, response from our feedback.
Cool. We also previously talked about splitting up that PR into introducing NLB support and then a smooth transition to add NLB support to existing clusters. Are we doing that or not?
Yes, I believe the scope has been reduced to just adding it.
Nice. Okay, great. The next action item review action items for last time is deciding on the next meeting day and time for both our regular, well, I want to say bi-weekly, but our regular, this currently bi-weekly Friday meeting and the next Hacktoberfest. We have been doing these Hacktoberfest meetings, impromptu gatherings, discussion things, which I think have been valuable and I think are different from what we are doing here. I don't know if we yet have enough data to pick a different day for this meeting. I don't know if anyone feels that that there's a strong reason to pick another day right now.
When are the Hacktoberfest sessions happening? Or they're just?
It's not at a fixed time, so
Okay.
we can now decide the next one,
Okay.
which will be
Gotcha.
next week.
Ideally, the
Yeah.
regular time. Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to like find a good time. I don't know. I think we've done Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9 or 10 o'clock on various days.
In what time zone?
Sorry, these are all Eastern. These are all Eastern, so they're very early for West Coasters.
Okay. That means we get Europe at least. So that helps.
Yes. Should we try a later one on? I think it also, we do actually lose some people in Europe if we go later as well, as to be expected. But and I think we lose some West Coasters as well, because unless we go really late, just because of the way the day falls. So I don't know if anyone has a particular time they would like to try for. Ideally, we would do one next week, either on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Would be my guess. We could try Monday, but Monday morning is never a fun time.
Tuesdays and Thursdays are good for me, or better for me at least. but that's just my personal feelings.
Yeah, I'll try to join at least one if we do it Tuesday or Wednesday, even if it's super early.
It's super early. If it's like 7 in the morning, it's not the end of the world. But if it's like 5 in the morning, it's probably too early.
Should
for West Coasters.
Should we try a 10 o'clock on Tuesday, Eastern time, 7 o'clock a.m. Pacific time? How does that feel for people? Any Europeans? Cyprian?
So I'm okay any hour as long as it's not Monday or Friday.
Okay. So then it sounds like 10 a.m. on Tuesday, which it looks like is the 27th, would be our next
so
impromptu.
10 a.m. is kind of the same as today, or?
No, it's currently
it's
noon,
1 hour.
2 hours.
Late.
2 hours.
1 hour later. Oh, you're saying what time is it? How long?
No. I meant what time of day means.
What? Like, it's like 1 hour later than now.
No.
Okay.
No, 2 hours. We're 10 a.m. Eastern.
Or sorry. Oh, 10 a.m. Eastern. Yes.
Sorry. So it's 2 hours earlier than now.
Okay. I got it. It's okay. Thank you. I was concerned about Pacific time. It was a bit.
Was there confusion around 10 a.m. Pacific versus Eastern or not?
Yes. You said Pacific first time.
So can we still do 10 a.m. Eastern or not?
It sounded like Eastern was good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not good for me, but go ahead. Yeah, the 2 hours before this are difficult for me because they're morning routine. So I can do before then, but.
Okay. I mean, I think that's, yeah, we will miss you, but I think that's sort of part of the idea, right? Is to try to understand. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Cool. All right. And then I think that's the last item on our review action items from last time, unless there's anything else anyone recalls. If not, we can jump into the open discussion. The first item on our open discussion is a fun one. Cyprian and I were chatting about the brand kops and kops and the potential to go do a rebrand and to emphasize the ops bit and perhaps de-emphasize the kops bit. which seems reasonable at this particular moment in history. Just because it's yes. And then, so I don't know how people feel about that. I think, Cyprian, you sent a very big PR, which I think is a big move, but we could try also a smaller move, like just changing it on the homepage or something like that. I don't know how people feel about emphasizing the O effectively.
Well, was also to see how it looks, because just doing on the home page seems even more confusing than it is now. For me, the main drive was that I never know if I should write it capitalized or lowercase, or, you know.
Yeah, I would certainly
So,
fix that, right? We would then have a very clear, like you wouldn't, yeah, because I've seen all lowercase and all uppercase, and to be clear, the CLI tool would remain the same. You wouldn't have to type a capital O unless you wanted to alias it yourself. Yeah, so I don't know what people think. Ambivalent.
I think we've it's been fun because we've described how to say kops or kops to people, and had for so many years to actually have an opinion on it, and a stated opinion is quite it's exciting in a way. It's also, you know, it feels a little awkward to me, but like but that's probably just because I've been saying kops for so long. I think it makes more sense for the longer term future of the project, probably. But that's my 2 cents.
You can try it and go back. It's like I don't think we're going to start dictating to people how they will pronounce the words.
What's the new logo? I think a lot of people call it kops anyway. So I mean, they do, regardless of how many times I tell them not to. So I have to correct myself.
go to the PR. So actually, this is the part that I like most. How?
Oh, here it is, the logo. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, chaos. Okay.
I mean, it's not a big difference in terms of, you know, the graphics, but removing that star around it and make it like this, I think it's much simpler and prettier. But I did it, so.
I didn't know you were an artist.
Yeah, right. Copy paste.
Well, that's really good. I also really like the O with the stylized K in it. Like, I actually really like that. Like, I could see us making hoodies or something with that on it.
That's pretty cool.
This is in this PR for people that are not. It's in 10077.
Yeah, one thing I don't like about our current logo is that the fave icon on the top of our webpage looks like a little sheriff's badge, which doesn't help the point.
Well, if we would choose this logo, so
yeah, your logo
separately
fixes that for sure.
from, yeah, I would cut this O and make it the fav icon.
And make it bigger, and that would make it bigger also, so we could see it easier. You know,
Yeah,
make it
just
more.
Nothing around it. So
I feel like if no one objects, we should try it.
I'm generally in favor. I have no complaints, but
it's one of those things which is like, you know,
I think it's a good idea.
People are more inclined to, like, you know, whenever Gmail does a redesign, everyone's like, oh no, you broke my Gmail. And so, like, if we're not screaming about it, then it's probably a good sign that, like, it's actually a good design, because it is always there's a big, like, resistance to change, a natural resistance to change. So if we don't hate it, that's a very good sign.
Is it would it be reasonable or useful to put some sort of a statement alongside? Like, is that taking too political, like a viewpoint?
I think we already have we have the
Black Lives Matter,
which I think is
tag. Correct. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't think we're making that much of a statement, or I don't intend for us to make that much of a statement. It's more just like we're trying to avoid something that is
avoid making the wrong statement.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So if no one has any real doubts, can you /LGTM?
Yeah, I will. I will do
Okay.
it. LGTM. That's great.
And I'll take care of the logo and everything else in a future PR.
Yeah, you can also just put it in, if it's an SVG that people can edit, right? You can also put it in, and like that's the sort of great like help wanted type issue for sort of a new type person or a different, I mean, you obviously are capable, but there are people that are dedicated designers or full-time designer type people.
Well, you mean to put it in channel or raise an issue or something?
Yeah, I mean, or just yes, and put it in. Yeah, do that. Put in your version as is. Don't worry too much about it, and say like, look, if someone has an eye for this, it'd be great to like tweak it and
Improve it.
yeah,
Okay.
balance it, that sort of thing.
And yeah, it's like an open source like design process then, or graphical process. Oh,
Yeah, we already have SVGs and everything. I saw it today, so.
Cool.
one thing is that Ole Marcus was Ole. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Was not. He said this doesn't immediately resonate with me. Do we cool with making that sweeping decision?
Yeah, he shows up to the Hacktoberfest meetings. I think he said he might not be able to show up if it was at 10 Eastern, but we can see if he shows up or just ping him again and say like, we generally thought this was no one had particularly strong objections to this, so are you okay with us trying it type thing?
Cool.
Okay, that was great. Like I was expecting a lot more abstract discussion, so thank you for that, and let's go on to a technical topic. 10048 is another one from Cyprian Hackman. Container runtime packages as assets.
Well, there already been 2 reviews on it. One is Justin's, one is John's. I think I addressed John's concerns, or at least most of them. Justin had some concerns about older versions of Docker that we replace from RPMs and debs with static packages to make it easier to do the setup and make it more consistent. Other than that, the PR is, as I said, move everything, move the packages that we install for Docker and Containerd to the update apply section so that you can see what's installing before it goes to NodeUp. And in NodeUp, just copy the files from these downloaded assets to the right location and set up everything as it was before. But this makes it a bit easier. No more packages with dependencies and things like that. It's just one file line with a hash.
Yeah, and I can clarify my concern, which I wanted to just bring to the group. I think it's a good change. The concern was specifically around these old versions, and they are old versions. We think it's prior to Kubernetes 1.16, that we are potentially changing the behavior, and that we are definitely changing how Docker gets installed, where previously it was installed using the distro-specific packages, and now it is installed from the tar files. And the question is, like, do we adopt the position, we think it's the same, it's an older version of Kubernetes, really pretty far back. Like if it breaks, we're okay with that. And we'll sort of fix it because we think it's pretty unlikely? Or do we want to adopt the contrary position where we say, it's an old version of Kubernetes, we don't want to break it because the last thing we want to do is like go back and have to like deal with those old versions. So let's just keep the code as is for those old versions. So that is the trade-off that I was wrestling with. And I think Cyprian has pointed out correctly that we do have test coverage or some test coverage of these older versions. So we're not flying blind, but we are, we certainly are not going to be, I think ourselves testing them as much in our development.
So how much test coverage do we have? I mean, that's my main concern.
Well, install it and run conformance testing. But that should be quite enough for the container runtime. It's not really something high level to require a lot of workout.
Yeah, because I mean, it is unfortunately an n-squared test matrix because you can specify Kubernetes versions and container runtime versions independently. And that's kind of my concern. Yeah,
I imagine we can get adequate coverage on that. I'm more concerned, it is, but the square is the distro and the Kubernetes version that I'm worried about. And we do have a grid that can give us some coverage. I was trying to look up whether we have, like rel with 116, and it looks like we don't go back that far. So we do test. We do specifically we do test with 116, but we don't necessarily test the rel with 116 or rel with, I guess technically 115. And so we don't. The hypothetical problem would be that there might be something in the rel 115 package which we miss. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just a question of how much coverage do we have, and if we have some coverage, it might be enough.
I say so too, especially because people that aren't updating Kubernetes probably are also not updating kops, realistically.
That is true. We have tried to say that newer versions of kops do work with older versions of Kubernetes specifically so that we don't have to maintain those older versions of kops for as long. I do agree with you that likely a user will stick with their older version of kops. I guess I'm willing to go with the group here. I'm willing to go either way. We do have some coverage, but we don't have the grid. The grid, which does all the permutations, does not go that far back. And I don't think we could try turning on the grid. Going back to 115. I don't know that it would break.
Older versions are picky with tests also, from what I remember when I did the backwards matrix. So I don't know, I could run some tests and fix rel if that's the case. But keep in mind that it's only rel 7 because until recently Amazon Linux and rel 8 didn't work at all. So I think it's a very small percentage of users using rel.
I can do a manual audit of what's in those packages, if that would be handy. And then if we're generally happy, then I would be happy having done a manual audit to just sanity check that we're there's something obvious. So I'm okay with this then, if other people are okay with it.
I already did it, so
okay.
Same. No, so I took samples from all the packages, look inside the RPMs and debs, saw what files they have, and didn't notice anything. Well, it's pretty much same binaries. Nothing really exciting.
What about the
Yes.
script? The script, so that's sort of what I'm thinking about is like, that's where the real magic happens.
You mean the ones that are used during the RPM install?
Yes, exactly.
No, didn't look for those.
Cool. Well, I'll look at those, and then if I don't find anything obvious, then I think which I suspect we won't, then I'm okay to merge this as is, because it is older versions, and as Rodrigo points out, it's unlikely that those users will be bang up to date on kops as well. And this would be in 120 and not in 119. Is that true?
I was targeting it for 119
Okay.
because it's pretty much ready.
But it is 119 to 115, so this is versions before 116, if I recall. So before Kubernetes 116. So it would be, I think we counted this on Tuesday, didn't we? You corrected my fence post error.
I said 119, 118, 117, and 116. So it's
more than 4.
yeah. Yeah. So I don't think there's any reason to keep it out of 119.
Okay.
One thing, please ignore anything SE Linux related if you do an audit, or as you said, because SE Linux was not enableable in kops until 119. So even though the Docker packages had this support, there was no flag in kops to enable it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the next thing, unless there's anything else on that topic, because this next one is an amazing topic.
Yay.
Peter, do you want to, you wrote it down. I think there are some representatives of I guess Cloudnatics, but do you want to introduce it, Peter?
Sure. So we've been, the Azure support has been our most thumbs up GitHub issue for a long time. And recently, Kenji, who I believe is on the call.
Yes. And also Nick in the Cloudnatics is here.
It sounds like Peter might have had some background things happening, but thank you. Yeah, this is around adding Azure support, and we see that there is I guess a fork, or an open source fork, which is really great to see, and great to have you here. Welcome, Kenji and Nick. And yeah, I think what we're hoping is that you're willing to contribute, and ideally contribute that upstream into the official kops binary, and that we can hopefully look to you to work on that in the main binary, if that's something you'd be amenable to.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So from our side, I just want to know, I think two things. The high-level, what kind of the procedure we should take to create a PR, because I can send that one giant PR, or probably govern difficult to review. But also kind of want to know the procedure. That's one thing. Also want to know, I don't really follow what community is doing. And there was some previous discussion on the cluster API and the kops. And kind of want to know if we still want to add this kind of new CSP support to kops.
Absolutely, yes. So I think the great first step would be just to, on your first topic, to just create an overarching PR just with all the changes in it. And we can read through that and maybe suggest some areas that could be broken down into smaller pieces. if need be.
Okay.
If it's not that bad, then we can do that. What we'll probably do is put the Azure support behind a feature flag,
Okay.
so that people won't accidentally get it. And what that also means for you is you aren't necessarily, you can make breaking changes if you want to. You can, we can merge it without as strict code review policies, for example.
Okay. Okay.
And so our review of the code will really focus on the changes to the shared code. So anything that's Azure specific, we can sort of say, well, that's behind a feature flag and that's okay. But anything that changes the shared code will be that where we sort of really need to pay more attention to.
Yeah, like especially for change to the cluster spec.
Exactly. So
Okay.
any of that sort of changes will have to, will be where the bulk of the review comes in.
Okay. 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 That's
And
so.
So that would be wonderful to see. That would be you'd have lots of people very happy when that one goes in. That would be wonderful. So thank you. And then on the cluster API, I do personally intend to get cluster API support into kops. I think it'll be a great thing. It's still a long way away, and we also want to support we always want to support the not using cluster API. And even when we get cluster API in there, it's likely that we will use it primarily for the worker nodes rather than the control plane nodes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a great need there. And there's also a question around, how do you create your first cluster?
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely still appetite for non-cluster API implementations. I think one of the things that will be very interesting is, as we move forwards, to what extent can we start to share code with cluster API? But that's 2 or 3 big steps down the road in terms of, first of all, we have to get, the support for cluster API in, and then we can start to think about, how to work better together. But so it's years away. We're years away from that. But in the meantime, yes, it'd be wonderful to get this Azure support landed. And I don't think it precludes cluster API support in any way.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Is there a target for cluster API support, like a release target? Do you have any sort of ballpark idea on it?
No, it's not. We can.
Okay.
It's. John has been doing some wonderful work to clean up the kops controller, and I think I finally out-GM'd that PR, John. Sorry about the ridiculous delays. Hey, I see the approved sign. And so that
Love it.
The missing pieces to add node support, worker node support, are not that big anymore. We can probably get that in fairly easily. I will put it on my list to rebase and see where we are. We're probably, whenever we want to, we could probably get it done within a cycle. If
we needed to, if we really wanted to, we could focus on it and get it done.
It's not even that much. It's not that much work, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, and that's specifically for worker nodes only.
Yeah. So that would mean we'd have some sort of like hybrid source of truth then, kind of like how
not overly. It would be a bit like the GKE model, or
yeah. Okay.
Where you sort of configure a control plane externally being either the GKE APIs, or in our case, the kops CLI. And then you can bring up additional nodes in your cluster, but you do that in a different place.
Yep.
Which isn't, yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, that is
maybe.
Oh.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some little chunks we can do, like get VFS support in. That's separable. I don't know how much you can do before you have to do the big mega commit, but.
And Kenji, you were saying something?
Yeah, so just wanted to kind of recap the procedure. So I will create a PR so that people can review, and then we can discuss how we can break down the PR and the merge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so
That's great.
much.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask one more question? So the vSphere code was removed from kops sometime back. That was also because there was no kind of contribution from VMware anymore.
It's because the code that was in there wasn't fully working, and there wasn't anyone able to maintain it.
I see.
And so it was. I think the balance was that if someone wanted to add support, they would probably not use the existing code, and it was not an asset, therefore, either to users or to someone that wanted to add support, because it made users think that it was working, and it made our lives harder.
I see. Okay, thank you.
One thing, I think the etcd manager support has to be added first, right?
I think you need to add the VFS to kops first, then you can do etcd manager, because etcd manager imports VFS.
So I guess 2 PRs before the big PR.
Yeah. Yeah. So VFS first, then etcd manager, then the rest.
Yes, but please do send the big PR first, and we can
Yeah.
talk that through.
Yeah.
And of course, you can also during the process, we can use temporarily a different etcd manager image, right? So I'm sure you have a fork of the etcd manager image, and we can use that fork temporarily on your branch.
Okay, sounds good.
Wonderful. That is really, really exciting news. Thank you, Kenji and Nick. Sorry, I clicked mute when I meant to click the next tab. All right, next item is from Cyprian, the Flannel CNI version 0.13.0.
So I added, well, I made it multi-arch, and well, it was time to upgrade. But in the newer manifest, they are removing the K8s app label. Let me. So I'm not sure if that's okay to remove from the manifest, or I should just add it anyway back.
It looks like they're just removing it without any, or they're just changing it to app.
Yes, they're changing it to app.
I know that SIG-apps has some recommended labels, and it is not just app, it is like a prefixed thing with like a name, like a Kates.io, apps.kates.io/name or something. I'm wary of changing it if it's just to get rid of the Kates thing. That seems a little odd. I don't know if we can figure out why they did that.
Let me see if I can find it.
I don't think it does anything. So from that point of view, I don't think it matters. But from the point of view of like, is it a good idea to randomly change labels on, if it's genuine, if it is random to change labels on our pods, I think the answer is no, it's not a good idea.
Well, they changed the selector also, which made it not apply. So I had to revert that change, but I wanted to know first if the Kates app label is mandatory or something needed.
I think it was a de facto standard, and then the SIG apps decided to come up with a different standard. And of course, because there were two standards, then neither one of them took off. Yeah, I don't know why they would do this. We should find out why they did it upstream. And
it's a bit odd because I don't know if they did it upstream or we did it here, because the change, well, adding those two labels, node and tier and app, is from Mike Denzi 4 years ago.
Okay.
So anyway,
It may just be legacy corrupt.
yeah, I will dig more, but wanted to be sure that I don't break anything with that, like it's with the other label. We have a special label for our networking pods, role Kubernetes IO networking one.
I personally would prefer to keep the labels as is, unless there's some reason not to, just because I don't. It feels like it's going to break people's monitoring and things like
I
that.
will add it back, and it will address any concerns.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And thanks for doing the update.
No problem.
John, node labels from cloud tags. A question about backporting to 119.
Yeah, you were asking that in the your final review comment. There is a what appears to be a bug fix where we weren't putting all the node labels in. So for that reason, I think we should probably backport it to 119. So
Seems reasonable to me. I don't know if anyone else. If anyone else has an opinion. It's a slightly technical question.
yeah. Okay.
Oh, Peter gives a thumbs up, so that's good.
Okay.
It's a good idea, and if we don't use it or get feedback, maybe we will forget to fix all the issues.
And John brings up a deprecation policy for container runtimes. This sounds like it could be controversial.
Well, yeah, this comes back from we're having to do all this stuff about the old container versions of container runtimes, and do we want to do something like tie the deprecation to Kubernetes?
Deprecation policy for container runtime versions, we should say.
Yes.
I was like, that is a much less controversial topic than what I thought you were saying.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so when do we want to deprecate and remove support for the old versions of our container runtimes? And I think tying it to the Kubernetes version might be the safest one.
I think I agree with that. I think we probably should have. I think we maybe have already done this, but without an actual policy around it. No, that's not true. We removed some ones that, so Docker removed some of their, correct me if I'm wrong here, Docker removed some older versions, and we said, well, we're not going to like worry about it because this is like Kubernetes 1.4 or something.
Yeah.
So like we effectively have this policy already, and I think it is the right policy, and particularly with Cyprian's PR when it lands, it's not going to be a hard-coded list anymore, so people will be able to add their own tar files. If they do want to run the very first version of Docker and see what happens, they can do that in theory. I imagine it won't work, but that's their choice. So yes, if you're proposing that we should introduce a deprecation policy, I would be very happy to see such a deprecation policy and I think tying to Kubernetes version sounds fine. We should not tie to the upstream deprecation. Annoyingly, we should not tie to the upstream deprecation policy because the upstream deprecation policy is very aggressive and doesn't meet the Kubernetes LTS or even pre-LTS lifespans. So like I think Docker says you have to like retire your version of Docker every quarter or something.
They changed it a bit.
Okay.
So the policy with Docker is not every quarter. They chose to do it that way. But when they release a new major version or whatever minor version, then they don't release any patch versions for anything previous, unless you're enterprise customer. And 1903 version of Docker is quite successful, seems. We still have it after many, many years.
So this is a good, I feel like the changes you've made, Cyprian, are excellent in this regard, in that we will allow users to continue to run whatever version they choose to, and you are adding support for Containerd, which has a more backporty strategy for this.
Yeah, so they have a clear policy for open source, so and free. So everybody could run without worries, I guess.
John, does that cover your, are you going to, I wasn't sure whether you were saying you were going to create a deprecation policy or?
Yeah, I think I need to do some research and create a deprecation policy, but
Are you willing to do
but-
that?
yeah, yeah.
Great.
I think it's, you know, along the lines of if you're running this Kubernetes, you can't run container runtimes older than that. That's sort of the shape I was thinking.
Technically speaking, anyone could run Kubernetes 1.11 with the latest Docker.
That's not the direction I'm worried about.
No, I meant if there's, if we deprecate some, it's better to run with newer Docker, which is still compatible, than to run with an older, unpatched and unsafe, because no one is releasing anything for it.
Yeah, my concern is running a new Kubernetes version with a really old Docker or container.
Well, that's covered. So I was saying that, let's say we want to deprecate anything older than 1903. Our concern won't be that people can run with older Docker versions, newer Kubernetes, but anything that we support in the past won't work. Any Kubernetes version won't work with these newer Docker versions that we actually support. Does it make sense?
I guess broadly the policy, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it will be that as the versions of Kubernetes roll off that we support, we will roll off the versions of Docker that are no longer relevant with some lag, right? Is that?
That's a reasonable policy. Yeah, because, you know, one is, you know, when do we get rid of the TV workarounds for 18.9.2? For that, we have to get rid of 18.9.2.
The which workaround, I'm sorry?
There's the marking runc as immutable.
Oh, right. Yes.
That we didn't do. We did it only for 1703, and anything after that didn't get it.
Why was it not fixed?
No, it was fixed only in 1903 too, right, John? We looked.
Oh, I don't remember all that, but
Yeah, I looked this morning when I addressed the issues. So.
Okay. Well, let's let John investigate this policy. We are running short on time, so I want to finish our. We're at the end of our open discussion topics. Unless there's anything critical, I suggest the next. And if there's anything else, we devote the remainder of our time to the release plans and the blockers. Okay. The release plan has a list of blockers for 119, which I don't think we've burned down yet. I certainly have some which are my responsibility. And I will tackle some of those. The one which I think is more pressing, so we will likely not do a 119.0 beta 1 given that list of blockers, I suspect. Unless there was, that seems to be what's going on. And then the 118.2, it looks like we had one blocker which has been closed as resolved. So I will do 118.2 this afternoon unless anyone else thinks of any 118.2 blockers. And we can also do 118.3. Okay, good. Can I confirm the 119.0 beta 1? We're waiting on those blockers. Is that what or waiting on progress on those blockers? Is that right?
Yeah, I think we need a little more progress.
You sure? I think so. I don't see NLB as being something happening in the next few weeks, unless
I don't think NLB blocks the beta.
Okay, so NLB doesn't. That means ACM doesn't, because it's tied to NLB. There are some minor ones for etcd manager. Well, there are blockers, but there are blockers for the release, not. And
I'd be
besides
concerned about 9990,
9,
the export context, but not credentials strategy.
I'll work on that this weekend. 9.
okay, that's reasonable. So if we get that, I think we can release beta.
Yeah, I think that's the one beta blocker.
The certificate with ACM, do we feel that's a blocker? Or?
That depends on NLB.
Yeah, it depends on NLB, and NLB is going to be a little while. So
That's not really the like like it can be a blocker even if it's unfortunate that it's a blocker.
yeah, but it is a particular use case, so not everybody runs across that. Unlike the always export.
I think as long as we treat it as a blocker for release, I think that's acceptable. Like, well, big old release note saying like, hey, this particular scenario is not supported in the beta.
Yeah.
Okay.
A question around 9794. I finally have some time to work on it. Do we want to hold off on that until NLB support lands, or can we land that beforehand? They may conflict, which is why I'm asking.
9794 is prevent unintended resource updates to load balancer attachments.
Yeah, this is a Terraform sort of caused bug.
So don't get me wrong. I think it's important, but the person that does the NLB part should really concentrate on getting it in and not rebasing and fixing the issues. I think you are much more, well, you have much more experience to do a rebase after him and merge it than him to deal with the differences.
I'll base my code off of his then.
Okay.
So I think we should review your PR if you can work on it, but then but merge it only after the NLB one.
Sounds good.
I want to call out two things that Peter mentioned in chat. I'm guessing he can't speak on the microphone right now, which is that he suggests having the runtime deprecations announced in the 119 release notes if we're going to deprecate in 119, and that we should try to have a pre-release with NLB and ACM. We shouldn't just do that at the last PR that goes in before we release 119.0, which I agree with. I think those are good points. And I don't know whether runtime deprecations is a priority from 119 or can wait till 120.
Yeah, I don't think it's a priority. I mean, if we are going to remove it in 120, then yes, it needs to go in 119. But
right.
So I would like to do the beta to get more coverage on 119. That's the reason. Even with the alphas, we got some very good feedback on bugs and issues. So I think if we don't release a beta soon, we will lag quite a lot. We can release one beta every 2 weeks. So it's very easy now. But waiting like we did in the past, it's not helpful for us. So
that's true. We did fight hard to get to parity, and we are risking slipping again behind. So from that point of view, yes. Can I suggest, why don't we, we'll see we're over time. Why don't we, I'll work on some of these blockers and we can figure it out on Tuesday, make sure that we are happy with betas.
I think we need to concentrate on the 9990 because I think that's the only blocker. Once that's in, we can beta.
Okay, that seems a reasonable position. Anyone disagree? Peter says thumbs up. I like that thumbs up logo. That's awesome. All right. Well, then we are over time. I rushed us through the last couple of minutes of our agenda. I apologize. But if there's nothing else, some of us can regroup on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern for a sort of Kops Hacktoberfest. And otherwise, I will see everyone in 2 weeks. Happy
Thanks, everyone.
Friday.
Well, enjoy the weekend, everyone.